We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back talking with Scott Cosenza on the two big Supreme Court cases that have dropped this week. We've covered abortion, and now it's all about guns. So, Scott, New York rifle and pistol versus Bruin. Is this as big a verdict as I think it is?
Was there a gun case that came out this week?
Yeah, apparently there was something to do with guns. It could have been pop guns. I don't know.
This is the ruling I've been waiting my whole life for, it feels like. I'm only half kidding. I can't tell you how often in the previous decades of my talking about gun rights that so many who are hostile to gun rights just throw out, well, the Supreme Court's never said, well, the Supreme Court has never said this and the other. And now between Heller and McDonald and New York State Rifle and Pistol, we have the sort of the triumvirate there that establish firmly Americans' individual rights to keep and, yes, bear arms, which doesn't mean taking it from your kitchen to the living room, but out and about. Okay, so this impacts only a handful of states really at the moment, which are states, I believe, that ask for an undue burden in terms of if you want to apply for a concealed carry permit or a carry permit, that you have to jump through hoops, and then they may issue or shall issue. And so the states concerned here, the ones that are may issue. So they've had a lot of discretion on whether to grant somebody the right to basically have their rights respected. So what's going to happen in this handful of states? Well, while it is just a handful of states, I think it's 6 plus DC, and Puerto Rico is the big non-state place as well that's covered. It's also kind of not correct to say that it's a small portion of society. I think 25% is the last number I saw of Americans live in one of these jurisdictions. The monsters of California and New York, of course, accounting for the lion's share of that. So this will affect 25% of Americans, and it means that they will be able to get a gun license just like getting a driver's license to carry, a gun license to carry. So if they meet, the restrictions, there may be character and fitness requirements, there may be training requirements, but what they won't have to do is, after meeting those requirements, then stand in front of a bureaucrat who tells them, yeah, but still, we don't like the idea of you carrying a gun anyway, so you can't have one. So here's the thing that's really struck out to me. There's so many people on, and I know social media is not the real world, but right. It does echo within the fourth estate. They're talking about how this is terrible because it's a rule for white people. And this blew me away because what it does, as far as I can see, is it actually removes any chance of discrimination. Now, whether that's discrimination based on race, sexuality, gender, it removes the possibility that somebody can be discriminated against. Is that about right? Yes, I think that is right. It's part of the grand hypocrisy, I think, of so many on the left, Mark. One of the things that's interesting about these pocket of states, these states that have this may issue rule, may issue as a law. And just for people who understand, that is juxtaposed to shall issue. And so the way it works is, if you meet the requirements in a shall issue state, you shall get the license. If you meet the requirements in a may issue state, you may get it. There's no right or guarantee to it. And that's, of course, you have to smile and cross your fingers. Yes. And it's good to be, have a campaign contribution in the right spot, or be famous, or otherwise have something that the people in power want, so that you can get the license or the permit. And that's no longer the case. But what I was going to say is, they only exist in lockdown Democrat-controlled jurisdictions. So it's so interesting when we see, I think, with the recent gun legislation that passed by the Senate and just being in the news constantly, there's this especially from the fourth estate, there's this thing in the air where, like, most people, reasonable people, think that gun control should be greater. But in places where there's any competition at all for leadership, political leadership, we have quote unquote liberal, which is to say higher access for gun carry. Only in places where there's no competition for political leadership by party. In California, in Hawaii, in New York, in New Jersey, All these places are the places in Maryland with may issue laws, okay? And they have no credible threat from the legislature of being, near 50-50 or occasionally getting any kind of Republican, leadership. So when people, are sort of represented by more than one party, and it's other than the Democrat Party, we get carry laws. And for all those that are, just waiting for chaos to descend, most of the country does have these laws in place and has for some time. It's going to be okay.
Now, I am wondering about the states that already have carry laws in place. Does this mean, is there any change there, or is it just strengthening the position that should there be, for example, should there be a swing in a red state to a blue state, for example? Does this mean that even if there becomes blue state leadership, that this can't be rolled back because it's an across-the-board federal constitutional? Is that what it means?
Yes, Mark, I think that's a very perceptive point that you're honing in on there. I actually had a discussion, Mark, with a very pro-gun person right after the decision came out, and they said to me, and I live in Virginia, well, it doesn't affect you. You already have shall issue carry in Virginia. And yes, we do have shall issue carry in Virginia by sufferance of the people that are currently in political office. And if they change a little bit, they may revoke it. So now that can't happen without a different Supreme Court ruling that would overturn New York State rifle and pistol, which could come at some point, but certainly not in the near term.
One final question for you, Scott. And we did discuss this in an article that we put together on libertynation.com. Is this what I think it is? Is it a new dawn for gun rights in America? As in, will people be less likely to try and infringe the right to keep and bear arms based on this ruling?
I said to you in response that I keep pinching myself because it seems like a dream. And the answer to your question is yes. This, Mark, stands not just for the striking down of may issue carry laws, but also the establishment of a stricter review scheme for laws that infringe on or impact the Second Amendment. So what a district court or a circuit court of appeals may have let go last week in terms of a gun restriction that has nothing to do with carry, it's going to get a tougher look now. And I suspect that there are many, many lawyers throughout the country sharpening their pencils and writing their briefs to sue and get all sorts of gun laws overturned. We're going to see in the next few years a long line of litigation, and I suspect it's all going to trend towards the pro-gun side, the pro-liberty side. So
a full lawyer employment act, but one that actually supports the Constitution. Scott DeCosenza, thank you ever so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
You're listening to Liberty Nation Radio, heard across the Radio America network from our flagship station in the nation's capital, WWRC in Washington, D.C. Later in the show, we talk America's military pushes the woke agenda. But up next, after this short break, it's all about Biden's recession denials. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fight for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I can
others.
do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.